Welcome to the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1, where we challenge the assumptions of our current society to resist depression and investigate alternative ways of living, for a world based on justice, solidarity and sustainability. Welcome to the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1 megahertz on the FM. That's the station. My name is Andy and I will be with you for the next hour. I'm coming to you this week from Wajak Noongar country, Fremantle on the west coast of Australia, but of course, as ever, broadcasting to the lands of the Jagera and Turrbal people in Brisbane and beyond on the internet. This week on the show, I'm going to, as we usually do, talk about politics and trying to make a difference in the world. And some of you may have heard that there is an event on tomorrow. It's the federal election of Australia, and it has all kinds of ramifications. It is important, and I hope you carefully consider who you are going to vote for. But I know I personally find elections extremely depressing. For one, because all other news and happenings seem to get sidelined to hear about some of the worst people our society has to offer women, to follow their goings-on. All the people who want to claim power to rule over other people are the last people who should have it. But beyond that, I also think it's just such a shame that for a while, we're pushed about who we're going to vote for, and that this is our input into civil society and politics, is who we vote for once every 3 years when an election comes up. And it's just so depressing. Imagine if this was the only contribution to society that you could make. Once every 3 years, voting for whichever person is the least worst option on a ballot list. It would just be, the world would be in a worse state than it is now, I'll tell you that. So I'm very grateful that there's lots of people who don't limit their political involvement to election days when they come up, and instead are out there every day in every way that they can, fighting to make the world a better place. And so that is what I want to focus on today on the Paradigm Shift. And we're going to focus on one specific method of creating change in extra electoral means, we might say, and that is non-violent direct action. People who have gone out there, broken laws they consider to be unjust, put their body in the way of processes that they consider to be unethical. And these are just ordinary people who have looked at the situation and decided that what they can do is stand where their beliefs are and refuse to move. And a lot of these people have done it as part of the movement against Adani, the mega coal mine in central Queensland. I spent a lot of time up there, the direct action Camp Binbee, and recently a few of us were up there, and I thought I'd get the microphone out and interview people, not political experts or anything like that, ordinary people who believed in making a difference. And so what you're going to hear today on the show are a few interviews about what it's like to get arrested for what you believe in, what the impact of that was personally, what they think is the political value of it, and some of the different stories, some of the fun and adventures that you can have. So stick around. That's what's coming up, a full hour of political empowerment. And we might start off with an interview I did with Imi Romit Smith. Let's hear what Imi has to say.
I'm Imi. I use they, them pronouns.
We are talking about civil disobedience, and you have done civil disobedience actions for the environment. Do you want to tell us about the first time you got arrested? What happened?
So the first time I got arrested, it was pretty, I guess, spur of the moment. Wasn't something I'd been thinking about for ages. I was down in Tasmania and kind of working in a campaign to stop logging in the Tarkine that the Bob Brown Foundation was running at the time. And I just got a call that there was going to be an action the next morning in a different part of the Tarkine because I was staying at the blockade camp. So me and a friend just fanged it down in the car, and we arrived in the middle of a meeting, and the question had just been asked of, are there any people who are able to get arrested? And no one put up their hand. And I hadn't been arrested before, but when I was living at Binbee, I was prepared to get arrested, but then the situations changed and that action wasn't viable anymore. And so I'd already kind of done the pre-thinking of, can I do this? Is this safe for me? Will it have any repercussions? Popped up my hand, and then we did a lock-on action, me and another friend, on some logging machinery in this beautiful, beautiful part of the Tarkine. We stayed there for about 9 hours, stopping all work, until the cut crew came and cut us off.
So that was your arms in a steel lock-on pipe around a machine?
Yeah, using an elbow lock.
So you said it was spur of the moment, but obviously you'd found yourself in that situation somehow or other. What were there things in your life, like influences, that had led you to think that a civil disobedience kind of action was a useful way to live your life?
I was still pretty new to civil disobedience and direct action. It was only earlier that year that I realised NVDA existed. But as soon as I was exposed to the community and just the ideas of, taking power into your own hands and knowing that your individual arrest isn't going to win a campaign necessarily, but that, arrests are a tool that people can use in order to, cause greater disruption and cause, generally greater media engagement, as well as, kind of being able to physically hold power in your own hands. And that was really appealing and still is really appealing to me. So my first experience getting arrested, it was fine. The cops were actually pretty decent. They tried their general kind of threatening tactics, but otherwise, I'll give them credit. I don't like police, but they weren't the worst. And after that, kind of being in the situation of holding that power and taking that action and being able to physically see something you've stopped, it's a pretty good feeling. I know, it's just such a staunch, strong community thing and a really strong tactic if it's kind of used in an effective strategy. And yeah, I'm a big fan, and I feel like getting arrested only helped me understand that process more.
You mentioned the community. How important was that in this whole process for you, I guess, of going from somebody who has concerns about the environment to somebody who is, personally locking yourself to machinery and, I guess, taking away the liberty of a law-abiding, social contract-abiding citizen? What role did the community play in that transition?
In my opinion, the community is what makes this. It makes all the difference. I think if there was no community, we wouldn't have, maybe not any direct action, but I think we wouldn't have effective direct action because, to go even just an arrestable action in of itself, it relies on so many more people than just the person getting arrested. And so even practically, it's kind of impossible if you're not working with people that you trust, at least enough to, stay with you in the forest, talk to police. And then also all the support roles afterwards, I had a pretty chill arrest, but a lot of the situation around that was quite difficult. And having a strong community of people who, some of them I just met, but I still was able to build trust quite quickly, it makes all the difference. And I think it means a good community is a thing that means you can stay in the movement as well, because direct action can be really scary, it can be really traumatic, but if we are able to support each other and be there for each other, that means we can keep on doing what we do and keep on growing and getting better and getting more effective.
You were quite young at the time. Were you worried about, what repercussions this would have for your future?
Not particularly, to be honest. In terms of legal repercussions, I feel like the main thing that affects is getting a corporate job or getting a government job or something like that. And personally, I don't want to base my life around a job. I'd rather get enough to survive and then be able to do activism, do projects that I care about. So I wasn't super fussed. And I think another reason that I wasn't fussed was like, I'm young. At the time, I was very, very femme presenting, white, and know that, if everything goes to hell because of arrests, I have like a support network of friends around me to support me. So I think not being worried about repercussions was also really linked to like all of the privileges that I hold.
You're also an artist, and art has many forms, and I think that nonviolent direct action generally is not just about disrupting machinery. It's a piece of theatre in a way. Do you think that your vocation as an artist, that leads in some way to thinking about NVDA in different ways?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because NVDA can, it is very impactful if it's not necessarily like really artistically beautiful at the time. But I think it's fun going into these spaces where everything can be seen as like really staunchly practical, and being able to appreciate kind of the artistic side of things and try to bring that in of like, look at those monopole lines. They're like really beautiful, and kind of then being able to translate that into artistic means, which I think can mean you can show it to more people who see the world in different ways. And you're like, DA can seem really scary, but like here's all the beauty around it. I think it's a nice way of communicating. And also, there's so much drama. You can really interpret any action through an artistic lens pretty well. That's actually what I did. One of my final uni assignments on was lock-on pipes and like how they're created, their artistic role in the world. Might have been a bit of a stretch, but it was pretty fun to do.
No, I think NVDA is an artwork. Like I said, it's theatre, but also, the job of creating a better world is a creative process, and it's a shame to limit art to just things that hang on gallery walls when really we're all called to create our world. And also it's a shame to think that creating the world that working for change is just this functional, like step-by-step thing. Yeah,
because we have no idea what a sustainable, post-capitalism world looks like. And if we have so many different creative minds all coming together to think of how we can get there and what that looks like, I think that only means we're going to have both a better result, but also a better path there, because we're going to try so many new things. And I think if you see activism and change making as kind of a set list of things to tick off, you're just kind of limiting yourself. It's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more effective if we get creative.
All right, well, how do you think this kind of breaking the law, civil disobedience actions, is it something that you still think is important and still think you want to be involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. I still think it's really important, and I think the kind of campaigns that I'm interested in has shifted a little bit, but I think just any resistance for the sake of resistance is incredibly important. And I think resistance outside of the law and outside of what kind of society sees as the effective way to go, of like petitions and stuff like that. I think it's absolutely vital. I think we just need to keep growing, keep learning, keep diversifying our tactics, keep trying new shit, keep challenging, Australia's so-called government. And I think DA is a really important piece of that.
All right. Thanks, Amy. On the Paradigm Shift, we are talking about non-violent direct action, civil disobedience, getting arrested for what you believe in, and putting your body in the way of the legal system when it supports immoral activities. I was speaking with Imi about her experiences getting arrested, and we're going to carry on. I'm going to go now to a conversation I had with Corrine Vissers about the same thing. Let's have a listen to Corrine.
My name is Corinne, and I live in Cairns.
And we're talking about civil disobedience actions, getting arrested for your beliefs, and you did get arrested last year. What led you to making that decision?
It was a progression about first getting aware of what was happening, the shock of that, the grief of learning about the lack of future, or the threatened future for my children, and wanting to do something about it, and feeling very frustrated that whatever we were doing wasn't changing anything, like the acceptable ways of writing to your representative, signing petitions, all that was just very useless. So I came to Camp Bimby a couple of times and was very inspired by the people here and the learning of nonviolent direct action and how that can help at least make a statement, but also personally is feeling like I need to do something, and so that's what I could do. It's a nonviolent direct action.
So then on Adani's rail corridor, you sat down, blocked the vehicle access. Do you want to talk us through what it was like?
It was a unique experience for me. It was the first time that I was going to do something that could get me arrested, and did get me arrested. It's obviously always quite symbolic, but the accumulation of different actions over time has really made an impact. So I felt part of, a little action, part of a bigger movement. So it was quite surrealistic in some ways, because we, had to get up really early and a long drive, and so there's a really calm atmosphere. And we arrived still on dawn. A couple of colleagues or companions were quite courageous in standing in front of the trucks that were coming. And I just picked up my chair and whatever banners I had, and just walked on the causeway, put my chair down, attached some banners, and then sat down, and I was away from everyone else, like 50 meters or more, and it was really, really calm. Like everyone was away from me, and was observing the birds, and it was very interesting experience.
It can be quite a interesting personal experience, like say that kind of reflective space. We're so often taught to obey the rules and to be afraid of unknown things, what might happen. Like you said, it was quiet and calm for you. Was there much going through your mind?
Yeah, actually I had a phone with me, and I recorded myself, like I talked to myself, and I sang a bit to myself, and I never shared that with anyone, just reflecting on what I was doing there. And although I was really calm, I was always also not surprised at myself. But this is a totally unusual situation for me. So, but also feeling I was doing the right thing. So I had a bit of a exchange with myself, but enjoying the moment as well, because it's not going to happen very often.
Often it's a thing, I guess, that we think of young people doing these kind of protests, young feral people, whereas you came into it a bit older. Yeah.
Much older.
What was it like as an older person doing this kind of action?
So I'm 63. Well, I was 63 at the time, and I'm a public servant, and I'm a middle class white woman. I think I was quite aware of my privilege. Of the risk I was taking was very minimal. It was just a fine. I knew as a first offender type thing, it wouldn't cost me much in terms of emotional damage or whatever. But so I came with that understanding, so I was quite confident. I think as my generation has obviously all the responsibility in creating the problem, and I feel that my generation has the responsibility to avert the worst. I have 2 young adult children who live with a lot of anxiety. I encourage them to question all the pressures that they have, but they have their lives, and so I was ready to make a bit of a stand for them as well, that it's okay to challenge authority and question what's happening around them, not taking it as the natural way. There's reasons behind what's happening around them, and they need to understand it. And I was empowering myself and trying to empower my children, and yeah.
What did your children think about Mum getting arrested?
Oh, I think they thought it was rather cool. The way I presented as well, obviously, it's not just about the getting arrested, it's the reason behind it and what we're trying to achieve. And so I think they understand that and respect that. Yeah.
Do you think that kind of civil disobedience action, direct action, stopping work, is a useful tool in fighting the climate crisis?
I do think it is, in terms of, like, I'm inspired by people who have done direct action. It's essential for me that it's non-violent. And so if I'm inspired by people who do it, then I think that's useful in itself. To grow the movement, it's about numbers, and not everybody's going to do the direct action, but it's going to encourage people to take one step towards action.
Any other thoughts on getting arrested, what it meant for yourself or what it means for the movement?
The getting arrested, like the actual going through all the processes, that was interesting, shocking, like, being put in the paddy wagon and driven for an hour in there, very uncomfortable. Then, doing all the fingerprinting, really going through all that process, it wakes you up, like it's a bit shocking. But for the movement, it really creates trust, and I think it strengthens the movement when people do take some risks together, and it's a part of a whole. Like, I think the direct action is necessary, and then it's like the pointy end of the whole movement.
All right, thanks, Corinne.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Andy.
On the Paradigm Shift, it is election eve, but we are talking about voting every day with what you do. And it's good to remember that as we are forced to do the dirty work of lining up and giving away our power to some politician who we don't agree with tomorrow. And it's worth doing a kind of critique of why is our political system broken? Why don't the people that get voted in represent us? That's not exactly what we're doing on the show today, but what I am doing instead is talking about other ways that you can make your political beliefs felt. And we have been talking about people going out there, putting your body physically in the way of activities you disagree with, and breaking unjust laws. Before Ryan Harvey, I was speaking with Corinne about her experience getting arrested to try to stop the Adani coal mine, and I'm going to keep going on that journey, and we're going to next interview Dave McRae, who has done the same.
Yeah, g'day. My name's David McRae, and I'm 70 years old. I've got 4 grandchildren, and I became interested in the climate crisis at least 15 years ago.
Now, so 15 years ago you started worrying about the climate crisis. In the last few years, you've taken that to a criminal level. You've been arrested a couple of times. What led you to thinking that getting arrested was something worthwhile to do?
Well, I just got sick of signing petitions, and I organised a few rallies in Rockhampton and meeting with politicians, joining groups like GetUp350.org, Stop Adani eventually, and I thought, they just don't give a damn. The politicians are not listening to us. So I knew someone from Yeppoon who had been involved up here, and she said, yeah, let's go up. So that's got me started.
That first trip, though, wasn't the one where you first got arrested. Was it did it take a little while to work up to the idea that you getting arrested would be a useful and a safe thing to do?
Yeah, initially I didn't intend to get arrested, and the first action, we were just on the rail corridor in 2015, and they hadn't even started. They were just getting started. There was a picture of us in the paper in Rockhampton being criticised. However, eventually I thought, okay, it's now or never. They asked me if I wanted to get arrested, and I said no, and then I slept on it and had a dream, now or never, and I said, okay, I'll be your bunny.
Wow, it was a dream. A prophetic dream.
Yeah, I often have little dreams that give me intuitive glimpses of what I should do.
That first one, well, it was at Hastings Deering, a truck manufacturer. You lock yourself to a gate. What was that experience like?
We just held a big long banner, and eventually, after stopping about 40 or 50 cars for 2 hours, the police arrived, and I happened to be the first one she walked up to and asked me to drop the banner, and I said, oh, I'd be letting the side down if I did that. So she arrested me, and I ended up with a $500 fine.
And the second one was a bit more dramatic. You had to run onto a Darney's mine site and climb up on a digger. Do you want to give us a bit of a blow-by-blow account of that one?
Yeah, I got a little bit obsessed with the digger and thought, yeah, we got to get on that digger, hey? You know, luckily I had really good support people who knew what they were doing, and eventually 2 of us walked there early in the morning, and it just all happened. The digger was right in the corner where we needed it, and we went over the edge, and after I fell down a couple of times, we were on the digger.
You still got a great physical feat. You had to walk a long way to get on there. Hey, it's an action easier for the young people than the 70-year-olds, hey?
Yeah, I had trouble with my knee and my eyesight, so I actually held on to someone who I'm really indebted to, and then the last couple of Ks he let go and said, you'll be right, because the moon was up, you know. Yeah.
What do you think? It's probably more common for young people to do this, or at least to start doing it. What's it like coming to this kind of activism as an older person?
Yeah, it is a challenge, physically, but I felt it was something that I was committed to, and conscious of the crisis with our climate. We just can't have, the fossil fuels continuing to go into our atmosphere. So I felt that I had to get up and do something.
Any other thoughts, Dave, about your own experiences, or what do you think about the civil disobedience in general?
I think it's empowered me in my life to face my fears, and I feel I'm much more bold than I used to be. I take risks more easily. I think it's helped me a lot, and I think I've improved some attitudes that maybe didn't help me in relating to other people, because it's very much a community that we're involved with, and I enjoy it very much.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Andy.
Hi, I'm Frodo.
Frodo, we're talking about civil disobedience today, and you are somebody who has gotten arrested for the sake of the planet. What led you to thinking that was a worthwhile use of your time?
Time and place. It was just because I was here and people were doing it.
Just got peer pressured into it.
Maybe not peer pressured. No one else put their hand up. So I did with my friend.
Well, so then you went down to the road to Darney's Abbott Point. You sat down and stuck your arm in a concrete barrel. Do you want to talk us through what the actual experience was like?
It was pretty chill. I feel like everyone else did most of the work. Me and my friend just walked on and then put our hands in and sat there. And then, because we were together, we just got to chat and sing, and it was pretty chill.
it was quite a dramatic day in other ways. There were French journalists arrested. It became an international media event, although not necessarily your arrest. What was it like, sort of seeing that go around the world and things, this action that you'd done?
Well, I thought that was pretty good. Like, it was a good way to get attention but not have to be the actual face of it. Like, it was good that they were there and got arrested as well, because then they became really big and still spread the word a bit. It was quite good. Yeah.
Since then, you've been back a number of times to Camp Binbee. Maybe at first you hadn't thought much about it and were just circumstance, but you've certainly come back a bit. Has it come to be something that means more to you personally?
Yeah, heaps more. I only came back at first because I had to go to court, and then I think on that trip I then kind of got more into the politics of it all, and like wanted to be here and wanted to help other people take action and teach and learn and everything to do with like activism and direct action and, you know, all these different tactics, and being around these people and having these discussions here was amazing. Like, I knew I cared about like the environment, and I've known that I've cared about lots of things, but I didn't really know those things very deeply. But being surrounded by it meant that I had more understanding of my own passions, really.
And the theory of it, like the strategy of it, is that something you think is important for, you know, humans trying to survive on this planet, like a kind of theory of non-violent direct action?
I think, well, Binbee at least, like the way we lived here is a better way of living in terms of the survival of the whole world, if everyone was like living like this. And so, and in turn, taking action and speaking up and bucking the norm.
On the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ, I was talking to Dave McRae and then Frodo about their own experiences rising up for our climate and locking themselves to machinery to try to stop Adani's mine being built. They both did fantastic actions and also were both people who were great parts of the community of direct action that formed around that Adani campaign at Camp Binbee. We are doing a bit of a people-powered special. It is election weekend, of course, and I'm here on the Paradigm Shift to remind you that political action does not start and end with jotting down a few numbers on a page tomorrow. There's all kinds of ways we can impact the world, and in the process learn a whole lot about ourselves and maybe discover a bit of new possibilities in the connections that we make. I've got one more interview about nonviolent direct action, and it is with Donna Smith, who's been a part of many environmental direct actions in the last few years since she took that first step. Let's have a listen to Donna. Donna, you've been involved in the Adani campaign quite a lot over the last half a decade or so, and in fact have been arrested in the campaign a couple of times. What led you to the point where you thought getting arrested was a good idea?
Basically, like for me, like arrest is a way of actually amplifying the issue, so people are willing to stand up and be arrested with the understanding that the implications, particularly for middle-aged white women, is negligible when you get arrested. So I just thought it was time for me to stand up, and also I think it's quite inspirational to other people in the movement to actually stand up and understand that there's essentially not that much risk there. And through taking those kinds of actions, if we get the media attention, then our issue actually starts to become more normalised and more Australians start to understand what's happening.
So you got arrested a couple of times in the Adani HQ in Townsville. Do you want to talk us through what the experience was like?
Yeah, for me they were both incredibly positive experiences and actually quite joyful experiences. So the first one, Adani had locked down their building because they'd had a previous occupation there, so they had security now in place, and you know we had some really great planning of ways we could still get up onto their floor. We had people basically in the stairwell, We had people trying to get into the lift. We had, examples of security guard in the lift and someone's gone and, pressed a button and sent them up to another floor and jumped out and then jumped into another lift. And it was kind of this real organised disorganisation. And by the time we got up to the floor, there was a couple of us, we held that space, the security were on the phone, oh my God, there's protesters here. And then we opened the door to the fire escape and in started streaming this protester, and security's on the phone like, there's 3 of us, there's four, oh my God, there's lots of them, there's just lots of them. And everyone peacefully occupied the foyer. There's a lot of really good positive storytelling, and eventually the police came in and there was negotiations, and there was 5 of us, I think, in that moment that decided to stay and be arrested. The second one, again, back to Adani HQ, so using polypipe to try to stop workers coming in. Again, a really positive experience. Got arrested along with a young lady and also an older gentleman. Lots of singing and chanting, lots of support up in there. We got arrested, taken to the watch house, and then eventually processed and released. And in both occasions, there's always someone there waiting for you, pick you up, feed you, and take you home and celebrate along with other people.
Yeah, it is interesting mentioning that fun and joyous. It really is. I mean, that sounds like a great action, just sneaking into the office and trying to get past security. Our lives are often pretty mundane, and you have these kind of heightened experiences when you're doing this that otherwise you don't really get. And I think people are a bit afraid to say that because it's not fun for everybody getting arrested. But NVDA can be really fun, can't it?
Yeah, I think I've been arrested the 2 times, but I've been involved in a lot of actions that have arrestable components. For me, it's an underlying theme of just joy. People are actually out there taking action. You're with a bunch of people that think the same as you, and you really can have a lot of fun. And the creativity that goes into some of the actions, very clever, very funny, really just trying to lighten it, because I think a lot of theory of change can be built around humour because people understand humour. So bringing that humour into these potentially conflicting areas where workers are and things like that really can help de-escalate. And I'd have to say some of the most joyous moments in my life have literally been in the front line, attending actions and being around these really rad people.
Your path into activism is an interesting one because you got involved fairly late in life, but then you dived right in. How did that work?
Yeah, I've always found this a really tricky question. So for me, I was in IT for 25 years, so really in the white-collar industry. Coal seam gas kind of got presented to me, and that just seemed really wrong. So I remember being at a protest, waving the banners outside of a hotel, and Dwayne Presky, the frack man, was, arrested and dragged out of kind of the hotel because he'd disrupted their conference. And it's at that point I kind of realised that's actually what I want to do. That's the disruptive element. That's what's working. Being out the front, waving the sign, I didn't understand the point of that. So from there, I jumped into some non-violent direct action, Rock the Gate. I think the first one they had out at Tara. Did my first action there. Stood in front of a gate, stopped some trucks. So that's the time when I linked up with a guy called Ben Pennings, and we started to co-create Galley Blockade around a deliberate direct action campaign.
Yeah, so this is the interesting thing for Galley Blockade, which I guess some elements of the environmental movement or civil disobedience, it's you have this broad idea and then civil disobedience is one part of it, or it's a later addition when all else fails, whereas Galley Blockade was from the start built around we are going to get people arrested, do disruptive actions.
Yeah, it really was an intentional direct action campaign. The main reason we kind of went that way is we understood that was actually a gap in the movement. So there was a lot of NGOs working in the space around, the petitions and the, inside, working and building relationships inside, the industry. and getting people to rallies and stuff like that. And we saw that direct action was a real gap and it was a real need to have it. So we deliberately brought that into the Stop Adani movement. We essentially, strategically picked the company that was like Downer was going to build and maintain and operate the mine. It was worth $2.6 billion. But I think the critical point, they were only a letter of award. They actually hadn't signed a contract. So we believed they were movable and decided that that's our target. We're just going to keep hammering them until they move.
And this is how you went from IT code writer to some kind of criminal mastermind, getting people arrested all the time, blockading trucks and all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey, isn't it, when you look at it that way? And that was deliberate, supporting people to get arrested. It was incredibly effective. Part of that campaign was really about sustained disruption, targeting particularly their bottom line. So, we're very fortunate that company had asphalt facilities which are easily shut down by everyday ordinary people literally standing in a driveway. So facilities were shutting down, trucks were stopped, major roadworks weren't happening. So it materially really did impact this company to the point where they pulled out, and it has been acknowledged that they pulled out due to direct action of activists.
Your IT skills have certainly come in handy, your organisational skills in the direct action movement. Some people would see them as a weird fit, but it does require a lot of organisation, doesn't it? And quite comparable skills in some ways. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. And it's acknowledging that obviously there's lots of different skills that make the movement powerful, and even in direct action creativity. But there's the analytical skills around organising, understanding systems and processes. When you do a call out on a red alert for the front line and there's going to be hundreds of people responding, setting up an email address is not going to be practical and work. So, you've got the skills around spreadsheeting and organising and automating things to actually take away the workload from other people so they can actually get on with doing the direct action and helping facilitate those actions. So analytical skills and organising skills are essential.
And looking forward, the Adani campaign's been a long ride, and there's been various good things come out of it, but ultimately we've ended up with the mine built. Do you think that going forward for yourself and for the climate movement, that civil disobedience, non-violent direct action is going to continue to be an important thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really has to be, in my opinion, strategic. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily going for a particular target with a particular ask and you win it. There's also elements of how do you build the movement and the skills, and how do you teach people that they don't need to comply and they don't need to agree, and people actually starting to understand the power is with the people. We, by our complicity and our silence, we give consent to these, oppressive systems. And I think direct action and civil disobedience and resistance have a place in all facets of life, from local to global. And, I genuinely hope that this is something that builds in the future. And there's very little of it in Australia. And we're quite apathetic, and I don't quite understand why, but I hope it grows because it's desperately needed.
All right. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Andy.
That was Donna Smith there talking about some of the adventures that you can have doing non-violent civil disobedience, some of the friendships that you can make, and some of the political impact that you can have, and all the different interviewees we've had on the show today have been testament to that, to the difference it can make in your own personal life and development, as well as the value of civil disobedience as a political tool. And a lot of these interviews recorded about the Adani campaign, which has been one of the big environmental campaigns in Australia over recent years. It is sort of dying down now. Of course, Adani has built that mine, sadly, although it will never become the mine that it was originally planned to be, thanks largely to the efforts of committed people like those I've spoken to on the show. But there will be plenty more, and we need it too, because if there's one thing I've learnt from parliamentary politics over the years, and indeed over the weeks of election campaigning, is that they are not up for the task when it comes to stopping the climate crisis or taking adequate environmental action for the times we are living in. They are hamstrung hopelessly by the dictates of big political donors, by their own party infighting and ideology, and by their fear of losing votes in key marginal seats. And so if we are going to get the kind of climate action that we require, it will be up to people like you and me taking whatever political action we can, using the abilities we have and the opportunities that we see. And the stories of those people we've had on the show today are testament to the power that ordinary people can have when they decide to take action. So I want to thank both those people I spoke to and everybody out there who's been fighting for a better world, doing the hard work behind the scenes of political action and the stuff that doesn't get recognised when the media goes into overdrive around election time and starts talking about politics as this spectator sport, but it doesn't have to be. I hope to see you out there fighting for a better world after we have to get the dirty business of the election over and done with this weekend. I'll certainly be back with another show next week on The Paradigm Shift, and I look forward to catching you then. See you next week.